Donald Trump was spiraling out of control late last night, posting on social media that he now needs to drain the reflecting pool because he said the vandals turned it green. It was perfect before the vandals showed up, he said, and they made it all algae infested. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump. They ruined the greatest reflecting pool since 1922, Donald Trump posts. He also posts this weird photo of this lady, and no one seems to know who she is. And Donald Trump writes, "Great daughter, my honor, President DJT." Just going back for a moment about that post on the reflecting pool, he goes, "Many additional people have been arrested having to do with the disgraceful vandalism of our beautiful reflecting pool. It hasn't looked or worked like this since 1922. It was originally built, but even then it leaked badly and didn't work. Ours worked perfectly, including the mirror-like finish, perfectly reflecting the two great monuments. We met with contractors today. Now we will probably be forced to release and drain much of the water in order to do the necessary repairs." And he says it was the vandals' fault. They took some form of knife or blade and put a 250-foot-long gash into the beautiful facade of what took so much work, competence, and money to build and complete. They poured a corrosive and destructive chemical into the pool. The reflecting pool was never so beautiful as it was just 1 week ago. Even going back to 1922, we are very proud of what we have done with this. What are you talking about? You know, there's real serious matters taking place right now. An emergency session has been called in Switzerland where the purported negotiations around the memorandum of understanding are taking place because Iran's been very clear. It will not address any of the issues in the memorandum of understanding unless and until the United States complies with its obligations, and specifically the first point in the memorandum of understanding states that the ceasefire applies to Lebanon and that the United States needs to ensure that all hostilities end in Lebanon, and that includes Israel's attacks inside Lebanon. And over the past 24 hours, the death toll continues to mount as Israel continues to strike inside Lebanon. At least 20 people were killed in Israeli strikes across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley on Saturday. Here are some photos of some of the people who were killed in those attacks. There have been about 300 strikes across Lebanon since Friday alone by Israel, killing at least 111 people and wounding 176 people, despite the ceasefire being claimed. And thus, right now in Switzerland, where there are the purported technical discussions around the memorandum of understanding, there is this emergency session that was called to address ceasefire in Lebanon and making it a durable and lasting ceasefire. J.D. Vance is the person, I guess, representing the United States at these talks, along with Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Why those two people are still there is beyond me. And why isn't Marco Rubio the Secretary of State there? I mean, look, I think Rubio's a horrible individual, but that's quite literally what his job is. I'm going to do another video this morning about Rubio throwing J.D. Vance under the bus. But there are deeply serious matters taking place. As Donald Trump confessed just a few days back, we're only a few days away from hitting tank bottom of the strategic oil reserves, and that would trigger a massive global economic depression, the likes of which we've never seen before. That's Trump's words, by the way. And Iran has once again closed the Strait of Hormuz because the United States is not complying with the terms of the memorandum of understanding. The terms are very clear, and Donald Trump, like he's breached all of his agreements before, is breaching the MOU. And so Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz as it relates to a lot of these tankers and cargo ships that are affiliated with the United States and the U.S. allies. But guess what? Iran is moving its ships out because the United States moved its blockade away. Iran is outmaneuvering and checkmating Donald Trump and putting the United States through a humiliation ritual that would be unfathomable in any era other than the one where you have a loser like Donald Trump in charge who claims that vandals are the reason for the algae-infested reflecting pool that he's been so obsessed with when the algae's in the Potomac Basin, which is the source of the water. And now he's arresting all of these people around the reflecting pool while making a mockery and humiliating the United States abroad and putting us in the brink of a global depression. Look right here. As Javier Blas explains, Iran isn't losing any time restarting its oil production and fresh exports. Steve Luckner explains from Bloomberg, Iran has resumed loading crude from its Karg Island export terminal after a break of about 6 weeks. Following the lifting of a U.S. Navy blockade of its ports, Iran has been the early winner from the easing of tensions with the U.S. following the signing of an interim peace deal, and has wasted no time in resuming oil exports, while international shippers with vessels stuck in the Persian Gulf have been reluctant to transit the Strait of Hormuz amid uncertainty over their safety, and Iran's Sepah Navy closing the Strait of Hormuz again as Israel continues to attack Lebanon. Get this, Iran has been able to move about 20 million barrels of its crude on tankers that were anchored off the port of Chabahar, with at least 20 tankers of various sizes anchored east of Karg. Iran likely has plenty more crude ready to ship out of the Gulf. So remember that U.S. blockade, our blockade is so strong. Even if you assume the blockade was working, which we know that there was a lot of tankers going through the blockade. We also knew the U.S. allowed Qatar to enter into a deal with Iran to get some of its ships to block the purported U.S. blockade. Well, the U.S. just destroyed the whole purpose of that blockade, because now Iran was able to get all of its oil out right there, thus removing any of the pressure that Iran may have been experiencing, while Iran's still able, if it wants to, choke off the Strait of Hormuz when it declares that the U.S. is violating the Memorandum of Understanding, because Israel does indeed keep striking Lebanon, which is a violation of the Memorandum of Understanding. I mean, the way Donald Trump and this Trump regime gets outplayed all of the time, we quite literally have the stupidest, dumbest people in charge right now. Meanwhile, in Iran, MB Ghalibaf, who's their parliament leader and lead negotiator, perhaps the most powerful civilian in all of Iran, he arrived in Switzerland. Here's what his post was. Notice that the airplane he arrived on has the hashtag Menab168, representing the 168 little girls that the Trump regime slaughtered in the war crimes where they targeted an elementary school in Menab, the sicko Trump regime. MB Ghalibaf wrote the following: I consider the innocent children of Menab and all the martyrs of dear Iran as constant witness to my deeds and behavior. They see us and expect from us. God forbid that I should ever bring shame to the innocent martyrs and people of Iran, and that I may join my companions with clear conscience, for I eagerly await the moment I see them. Hashtag Menab168 in memory of the children of the Menab school. You see over here MB Ghalibaf meeting others in Switzerland as he arrives. The Pakistani Field Marshal and Prime Minister will be arriving as well in Switzerland. But to be clear, the first working session is an emergency session right now, dealing with Lebanon and in trying to ensure that there's a ceasefire. But if you want to hear the statements coming out of Israel, there seems to be no close desire to being anywhere near a ceasefire. I mean, you've got statements from the Israeli finance minister, Smotrich. This is what he says. Israel should fully conquer the Gaza Strip. It should establish military administration there because there is no other workable solution. Gaza should be resettled by the Israelis. Here's what he just said as well. I think I had a very significant influence on the war. There were moments when the war would have stopped long ago at various junctures, and I had to invest a great deal in persuasion. My relationship with Netanyahu is very close. There were moments when I had to use a veto and prevent what I saw as a surrender. So anybody who's like Ben Gvir, the National Security Council leader or the National Security Minister of Israel, like, he doesn't have real power. He's the National Security Minister. What do you mean he doesn't have real power? Like, Smotrich doesn't have power. He claims he has a lot of power, and you can be like, oh, they're just saying that to brag and to boast. I don't know. These people are in key ministerial positions right there. And certainly the conduct matches the rhetoric in terms of what's going on in Lebanon. Meanwhile, the right-wing newspaper in Italy, Libero, posted the following. This was their headline today. Trump is an asshole. That's the front page headline in Libero. And you would think that Donald Trump, as a far right wing, I mean, Trump's a fascist. I wouldn't call him for far right wing, but Giorgia Meloni was viewed as the Trump whisperer, right? She was the right wing politician from Italy in the right wing party there. And Libero is the right wing newspaper. And Trump's approval in Italy right now is 8%. And, after Donald Trump continues to mock Meloni because he hates women, hates NATO, hates allies, and he is just jealous of, he's jealous of her. He's frustrated that NATO wouldn't allow him to use air bases to commit his war crimes. There's a deep paranoia infesting the White House, like that algae that infests the reflecting pool. It's such a metaphor for the Trump regime. And also this idea that they think that they can just paint things blue. And then when the problems arise, because Donald Trump's a con artist, fraud, and a loser, he just goes, oh, it's not the algae, it's the vandals, it's the Democrats. What you're seeing isn't really happening. And by the way, yesterday, CENTCOM to manipulate the oil markets, because the oil markets, the futures will start showing today, and I think we're going to see. Brace yourself for what we're going to see in these oil markets with the Strait of Hormuz being closed. CENTCOM, just a complete Trump propagandist arm at this point, they posted, we got through 20 million barrels of oil. No, you didn't. Are you counting Iran getting out its oil? Was that the goal? You removed your blockade. Iran got at its oil. But the tankers that are affiliated with the U.S. and allies, they're not getting out. I mean, it's like we literally have the dumbest regime here in the United States ever. It's hard to even fathom how incompetent, dumb, and evil these people are. And by the way, as I mentioned before, paranoia is setting in as well. You have the Trump regime. They're saying all of these MAGA influencers who have been hanging out at the White House, they're taking money from Israel. They're taking money from other foreign lobbyists in order to try to manipulate the White House. Apparently, according to the Daily Mail, the White House has compiled a blacklist of all of the prominent MAGA influencers who they believe are taking money from foreign entities to try to bring down Donald Trump. A White House source told the Daily Mail, quote, I just have utter contempt for them, referring to the MAGA influencers. There's a whole group of them. They share business. They refer each other. They inflate their connections, and they travel in packs. You don't think that likes attract likes? I mean, Donald Trump is the ultimate grifter and fraud, doing the insider trading, manipulating the markets, 3,800 stock trades in the first quarter alone, buying dips when the American people are out there suffering and can't afford anything. And this is what the Trump regime is doing right now. And by the way, that $300 billion purported fund that's getting paid to Iran, you know how Trump's like, well, we're not responsible for that. You signed the contract. You're like a guarantor of it. Who's responsible for it then? The Middle East countries? Some of their GDPs aren't even $300 billion. You signed a contract committing $300 billion. So when you claim it's other people's money, you're still guaranteeing it. And by the way, that's $300 billion that could go, I don't know, maybe to the rural hospitals that you defunded here. $200 billion in rural hospitals that you defunded, Medicare, Medicaid, health insurance, SNAP benefits. You're focused on the $300 billion to Iran. Yeah, because guess what? When you fix it, you break it. And you've admitted that if you don't do this, we're about to face a global economic depression right now. And while there is an emergency session taking place in the Switzerland negotiation negotiations when Marco Rubio is too busy to even show up, or he just wants to throw J.D. Vance under the bus, and he's there with Witkoff and Kushner, two people who aren't even appointed to these positions, and the American people are suffering right now. You're arresting people by the reflecting pool and saying vandals. Do it, and you're posting random pictures of ladies late at night and saying, my good daughter, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Meanwhile, you have Marco Rubio arresting immigrants who are here lawfully pursuing an asylum process like Beto Corral because he supports one political party in Colombia and not the right-wing political party that Donald Trump is trying to push into power on the runoff elections. Colombian President Petro has called the arrest of Beto Corral, who lived in Arizona. It's like, the guy supported Gustavo's Petro's party and the left-wing party in Colombia. They're calling it political persecution. So that's what Rubio is doing right now instead of being in Switzerland to actually do his damn job right now. Also, we'll keep you posted on this. We believe on Monday, Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the UK is going to be resigning on Monday or Tuesday. He was embroiled tangentially in the Epstein files because of the ambassador to the United States. There was other issues too, but that was the main one, to lose confidence in his own party. And just think about how that's what's going on in the UK, where Donald Trump, who's literally the center of the Epstein cabal, continues to be the leader of the GOP. I think that tells you a big difference right there. Anyway, we'll keep you posted every step of the way here on the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 7 million subscribers. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.